Upwards of 420 people were detained at these protests in Moscow, according to a monitoring group. Many of them have already been released, but a number of them are having charges written up against them. Among them was Alexei Navalny, the opposition figure. He has been released from detention already, but upwards of 1,000 people gathered in the streets of Moscow, possibly several thousands. There's been no official tally so far. And although Ivan Golunov, the independent journalist, had already been released from house arrest and had already had the charges dropped against him, thousands of people wanted to make their voices heard about this case. It has garnered an enormous amount of anger here in Russia. Many people wanted to demand justice for Golunov, wanted to see punishment of those who were behind his arrest. They're calling for the release of other people who are behind bars that they believe is unfairly. And they also were calling for wider media freedom in Russia, wider freedom of speech. And in their own words, here's what some of those protesters had to say.
There is no real change. They have been forced to liberate Ivan Golunov. They did it because people came out on the streets. Without that, it would not have happened.
What he has experienced in recent days is horrible. Now, not only the police officers already suspended must be punished, but also the people behind and those who allow this arbitrary police to exist. And other political prisoners must be freed.
Well, many people attending these protests said that the Golunov case was a turning point. It was the final straw. Anger has been building among many people here in Russia, particularly amongst journalists and civil society for quite some time. And many of them felt that this case was so laughable, the charges against Golunov were so unlikely, that this was certainly a big turning point, which is why we've seen so much anger here in Moscow over the last few days, so many people gathering to make their voices heard in protest against this detention, even after Golunov was released. Golunov was not terribly widely known in Russia beyond journalist circles, but he was very well respected for his investigations, his very critical investigations, often into local corruption. And so many journalists and other activists and civil society members felt that this was a very important moment in Russia, a watershed moment for media freedom, which is why so many of them have gathered out in Moscow on Wednesday.